So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Buddhist Society's basic meditation class tonight. And I'm particularly delighted that we managed to get Bhante Bodhidhamma to lead the class this evening. Once upon a time, when we met face to face at the Buddhist Society, and Bhante himself was based in London, he used to be pretty regular. He'd visit the class 3 or 4 times a year, something like that. And now he's living in Wales. I'm really delighted that he's got the time to spend this evening with us. This is. I'm sure quite a few of you have met him, heard about him, read about him already, and really, I could spend the whole evening giving you some sort of biographical rundown. So I don't want to do that, but let me just say that this is called the basic meditation class. The basic meditation class. It's not called Theravada or Mahayana or Zen or whatever. To me, it's basic meditation, and it's great to have somebody like Bhante Bodhidhamma who has trained in quite a few different traditions, including Roman Catholicism.
Right.
Including Roman Catholicism, to teach the class tonight. But he's trained in the Soto Zen tradition, the Throstle Hall, and in Theravada, mainly I guess in Burma, but also in the Thai forest tradition, and in Sri Lanka as well. And it's really great to have somebody leading the class tonight with that sort of experience. So in a moment or two, I'm going to shut up and hand over to Bhante. Could I just say that, as I understand it, he's going to give some guided meditation. We're going to sit for a while. Then at the end, plenty of time for questions and discussion. And meantime, if you're bursting to ask a question, please send it through by chat. If you send it to me, with a bit of luck, it's going to arrive in the chat box. And then I'll relay it to Bhante at the appropriate time. So that's more than enough from me. So good to see you here this evening, Bhante. Please lead the class this evening.
Thank you for your generous introduction. I'll give you the money afterwards. So, I just mean to lead a meditation. I really teach according to the Mahasi tradition, which is, Burmese. Mahasi himself was Burmese. And if you just want to sit, just turn the sound off. But if you want to follow my instructions, do keep it on. That's it. I'm presuming I've got beginners or false beginners, people who started and then forgot to continue and have returned to the fold. So is that right? I presume I have. So anyway, there'll be some basic instructions, but lots of time just to keep your meditation going. It's 45 minutes or so. So if it's a bit painful, those of you who are just beginning, just change your posture. Just know that the discomfort is too much to bear. You can talk to yourself. This comfort is too much to bear, intending to move. And then you can change your position mindfully, and that's as simple as that. You can do some standing and then sit again, but we'll just go through the whole process. Okay, and then I'll end off with metta practice, and I'll just say a few words before that, just again for people who might be beginners, and then after that we'll see what questions come up. Okay, so just make sure you're sitting comfortably. It's important that the spine has its natural curvature. Right? You're not pushing it in too much, and it's definitely not pushing out. So normally speaking, your knees have to be below your hips. See, and then make sure you're lifting up to the top of the head. If you can find your core muscles holding your stomach and the lower spine, that's the way we ought to sit. Okay. And then your hands just on your lap, whatever's comfortable. And then we just gently close the eyes. And just starting at the forehead, just relax it. If there's any tension there, just relax it. If it won't relax, just acknowledge the tension. Don't do anything. So the eyes gently closed. Now the jaw relaxed. So if you've got tension there, just waggle it about a bit or clench your teeth and relax. Lips together, teeth apart. And there's the shoulders. Often there's lots of tension in there. Give them a good squeeze. And your hands on your lap. Palms facing upward, I think you'll find most comfortable. Now just coming into the body, feeling the breath. Can you feel it in the abdomen? Is there any tension in that area? Don't do anything, just feel the tension. Is the breath more prominent in the stomach area? Any tension? Coming up into the chest. Do you have a shallow breath? Feel any tension in that area? Feel the heartbeat. So now just checking the energy, lifting up through the top of the head. Draw the attention from the forehead all the way down to where you feel the breath most, the abdomen, around the stomach, the chest. And just as you contact those feelings, those sensations, sometimes a little noting word can help, rising, falling. But your attention is always towards sensations, feelings. Rising, falling. If the mind is wandering, as soon as you wake up out of it, really recognize and acknowledge what it's getting caught up in. Worrying, and then just draw the attention gently back to the breath and determine to stay there. Even now, if you're feeling a bit dull-minded, a bit tired, so make sure you keep lifting that spine and keep coming back to the breath. Rising, falling. If you're observing the breath of the nostrils, by the way, and just in, out, if you want to use the noting. If the mind is wandering, as soon as you come out of it, really recognize and acknowledge what it's getting caught up in. Planning, draw the attention back to the breath. Determined to stay there. Feeling sleepy or tired, lift that spine. You can open the eyes a little bit, even a lot, just to let the light in, but keep the attention towards the sensations caused by the breath. Just allowing these pleasant, neutral sensations to bring silence to the mind, calmness to the heart, and stillness to the body, rising, falling. If the mind is wandering, soon as we wake up out of it, really recognize and acknowledge what it's getting caught up in, the mental state, the mood, joy, sadness, Then draw the attention back to the breath. Determined to stay there. Feeling sleepy, tired, lift the spine, open the eyes. In really bad cases, you can stand up. As we feel that calmness coming, that sense of focus, draw yourself closer to the breath. Just see if you can catch the very beginning of the in-breath. Stay with it to the very end. The very beginning of the out-breath, stay with it to the very end. Now, when you do this, if you start getting tense because you're over-efforting, sit back within yourself and have the impression of the information coming towards you. Rising, falling. If the mind is wandering, as soon as you wake up, really recognize and acknowledge what it's doing. Driven by a mental state, an emotion, a mood. But this time, don't come back to the breath. Come into the body to feel what's happening there. If there's worrying, as you come into the body, you might feel the tightness around it. You would say tightness. That's what you're actually feeling. If it's a felt emotion, you can actually feel anxious. You note anxious. If it's a joyful thing, excitement, come into the body, feel it as a turbulence. Stay with it until it completely passes away. These noting words are just to help the mind to stop it wandering, the intellect, but the attention is always towards feeling sensation. If you're feeling dull, lethargic, those are the sensations you have to explore. But we always begin with the breath. Rising, falling. becoming more aware of how we are reacting to what we're experiencing. And when something is pleasant, we're drawn towards it. We want to maintain it. We want to develop it. And we develop it through our imagination. And when something is unpleasant, first of all, we try to ignore it, but then we want to push it away. We don't want to see it. These desires, wanting, not wanting, the Buddha points to as the primary psychological reason for our suffering. Is that true for you? Becoming more aware of how everything we're experiencing is in process. Everything is arising and passing away. Each breath is similar, but not the same. Everything vanishes. Is there anything within this turmoil that you can depend upon, that you can rely upon? becoming more aware of how everything we're experiencing are objects. There's the feeler and what is being felt, a discomfort in the knee, for instance. There's the experiencer and what's being experienced, some emotion or whatever. We can see images in our minds as objects. We're looking at them. Sometimes we can even catch a thought. Can you make that separation between the observer and the observed, the feeler and the felt, more obvious to yourselves? You can put a word like there. So there's a sensation, there's discomfort, there's an image. Just separating them. Can the perceiver be the perceived? Becoming more aware of how when we've accessed this observation post within ourselves, pulling ourselves, as it were, out of this body, heart, and mind, it still continues. The body keeps offering us sensations, feelings, whether we want it to or not. The heart, its moods and emotions, whether we want it to or not. And the mind, forever trying to think and imagine, whether we want it to or not. They seem to have their own willpower, their own agency. If they can act on their own, how can they be me? Putting aside all instruction, have confidence that this intuitive intelligence, this intuitive awareness, which we are, has now got enough information. It doesn't have to think, it doesn't have to feel anything. It just has to sit within ourselves and just observe, just feel, just experience whatever is being offered within the field of awareness. Don't do anything. Don't try and change anything. Leave it up to the Buddha within. When we come to the end of a sitting, it's always good to reflect for a moment. How committed were we on bringing ourselves back to the present moment? Or did we allow ourselves to wander away? And if we thought we were committed, we should congratulate ourselves. If we thought we could have been more committed, we should encourage ourselves. Don't get into self-criticism. How did we deal with the various physical and mental states that arose? Were we skillful? Could we have been more skillful? Were we confused? It's best to choose just one. If we thought we were skillful, we should congratulate ourselves. If we thought we could have been more skillful, we should encourage ourselves. Don't get into self-criticism. If we were confused, make sure you ask a teacher. Which of those 3 characteristics was most prominent for you in this sitting? Was it this process of desiring, always wanting to change the world to fit us, wanting, not wanting? Or was it that sense of impermanence, how everything comes to an end? Or was it that sense of everything being an object, just arising of its own accord? Not me. And it's good too to make a resolution. It can be quite specific. Next time I feel dozy and in meditation, I'll immediately open my eyes. Or it could be a general commitment to affectionate mindfulness. So we can do a small practice of metta. Feel free to change your posture. It's good to feel comfortable when we're doing this practice. It's important to do this after Vipassana, because in Vipassana we develop the quality of equanimity. We don't want to be involved. We want to be objective in our investigation, inquiry. If we go straight from a sitting into daily life, often this equanimity can corrupt into indifference, sort of hardness. So in order to re-engage, we practice metta. When we practice metta, don't worry about how you feel. Sometimes you feel loving and sometimes you don't. That's not important. What's important is making these intentions with fullness of intention. Because what we're doing is developing an attitude. So when I say, may you be well, I'm developing the attitude of care. If you wish, you can use the traditional blessings. So may you be safe. Everybody wants to be safe from COVID and all that. May you be well. People want to be healthy. May you be happy, free of mental distress. And to develop an attitude of life which is more at ease, to live more contented and in harmony with the world, even when the world's not such a pleasant place for us. We work with it. May you be safe, well, and happy. May you live contented in harmony with the world. Obviously, you can make up your own or use different ones. So we'll go through the traditional categories. First of all, Let's bring to mind somebody who's helped us in our lives, a benefactor. And as you see them in your mind's eye, drive your good intention towards them. Bring to mind those who are near and dear to us. Friends, people at work, whomever we wish. There's a category of a neutral person, so somebody we see but don't know, such as a neighbor. Turning now that stream of goodwill towards ourselves. Into the heart of goodwill, we can bring someone we have difficulties with. Radiating outwardly, first of all, to each other, our present spiritual companions. May we, radiating outwardly to our neighbors and neighborhood. All the people in our country, all the peoples of Europe, all peoples on earth. And to all beings in all directions. We can end with a little chant, which means may all beings be happy. Sabe, Sata, Sukhita, Hontu, 3 times. And then Sadhu, well done, 3 times. Sabe, Sata, Sukhita, Hontu. Sabe, Sata, Sukhita, Hontu. Sabe Sata Sukhita Hontu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. Anybody liberated? Well, better luck next time. So it's, if there are any questions, this is a good time. Well, if there are no questions, we can go and have a cup of tea. Oh, can't you hear me? Can't you hear me?
Yes, Bhante.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah. Could I just repeat that before we go and have a cup of tea, could we, if anybody would like to ask Bhante a question? Actually, I remember when you used to teach at the Buddhist Society, you used to say things like, any questions, comments, criticisms?
Oh, yes.
You remember that? Well,
I
we
do.
didn't get many of those. But if anybody would like to ask a question, make any comments at all, please send. Please either you can unmute, I guess, or send it through in the chat box. Actually, I've got a question coming through here. First of all, somebody says a big thanks, but somebody else also says, how may I adjust to numbness of circulation in extremities near the end, please? I mean, I'm not sure whether these extremities at the end or near the end of the session, but I mean, adjusting to numbness, please, Bhante. Could you say something about that?
I presume the numbness is in the legs. Whoever
I guess.
asked.
I guess.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. It's usually because you're sitting too far back on the cushion. So what's happening is the cushion is pressing up against the top of the leg, and the artery and the nerves come to the surface just after the buttocks. So what you've got to do is come forward on the cushion and sit directly on the pins of your hips. Yeah. You can, if you don't know where they are, you can sit on a wooden chair, and then you can and feel where they are. If the cushion is under those, you shouldn't get the numbness. Yeah. No guarantee, Julia.
Could I ask a question, please?
Why not?
Well, okay, so you've practiced in these many different traditions. And maybe you could, I mean, I know a little bit about the Mahasi. I know a little bit about Yubakin, a little bit about Soto Zen. And here we are doing basic meditation here. Could you say a little bit about how these different traditions work for you and what we here could learn from them, perhaps?
Well, any insight practice, as opposed to a practice which is to develop a beautiful mental state, a samatha practice, concentration practice, through mantra or through beading, or well, you can even do it just watching the breath, establishing a beautiful mental state. When we're doing that, that's what we're doing. We're trying to establish a beautiful mental state. But obviously, there's no insight in that. The insight comes when you awaken within yourself a sense of curiosity. Now, there are various ways that these traditions have found to, shall we say, make that attention steady so that it can make the investigation. So in Zen, for instance, at Throstle, we used to run around very fast, do everything at huge speed. I remember my first meal there, the porridge came round and I just served myself, and I was about 5 or 6 down from the abbot, and there were about 15 of us. And I was looking at the porridge and I picked up the spoon, and as I lifted the first mouthful to my mouth, the bell went. So I had to chuck it all down as quick as I could. Well, I learned very quickly, of course. And the idea of doing everything fast is, of course, it builds up your energy, and you have to be mindful. You start dropping things, walking into things, so that when you sit, you don't need a particular object. You can just sit. And you've got enough attention and effort to observe things as they arise and pass away. In most other traditions, there's some sort of technique. So as many of you will know, in the Ubakin technique, it's, you keep moving down the body. So every time you move, that's an act of intention. And an intention re-empowers your attention. So every time you attend to something, there's an empowerment there, and it goes in, right? I remember way back in, I'm giving my age away now, I think it was the 80s, when people were doubtful as to the power of these billboards on the street. So to prove that to the people who own the billboards, to prove that in fact they did have power over people, they actually did make them buy things, there was an advert came up for a very strange Australian perfume. I think they called it Kangaroo or something. And it had a hat with cork sticking down on the side. And they said this was the latest thing. Well, of course, there were hundreds of thousands of inquiries. So the thing, and the reason is that when you're sitting on a bus or in a car, and you just look across to an advert, that's an act of intention. It's an act of attention, and it immediately conditions you. So whether you like it or not, all these adverts that we're seeing, they have a subtle effect on us, and sometimes a bit more than subtle. So in that technique of going down, you're observing, of course, impermanence and all that, which is basically looking at the three characteristics of existence. Just the movement keeps you attentive. In other techniques, they like to build up the concentration first. So you might do this mantra of Bud Ho, Bud as you breathe in, Ho as you breathe out. And then when you feel your mind is steady, you just open up to whatever's being offered. In the Mahasi technique, there's this noting. So people sometimes find that very useful. Sometimes they, at the beginning, sometimes find it as a sort of obstruction, because all they can be aware of is the word they're saying, rising, falling. And what this tells the meditator is that this intuitive awareness is completely confused with the intellect. And it's only by driving the attention towards feeling that it finally releases itself from the hold that the intellect has on it. And the problem with the intellect is that it thinks in concepts, so that everything you're looking at is always being distorted by the concept with which you're looking at it. You can't look at an apple without actually having the idea of an apple in your head. In order to look at the apple without that idea, you've got to really stare at it. And as you stare at it, you'll see there's all sorts of things that you hadn't seen, because the mind, the conceptual mind, simply fills it in for you. So that's one of the purposes of noting. The other one, of course, is that it distances things from you. And that's part of the process of recognizing what is not you, not self. And in that process, of course, it begins to dawn upon you that there's something that's observing. And that's what we're hoping to realize as a real insight. So all these techniques have a purpose of making us attentive to what's arising and passing away. And they're always looking at it from these three characteristics of existence. So we're always trying to see the role of desire, how impermanent things are, especially the ending. We're always there when something new arises, but we're never there when something finishes. We're always on to the next thing. And to see that these are objects, an object can't be the subject, and that it sometimes has its own volition, you might say. So this is what we're investigating. The fact that at the same time there is a purification of the heart, which we would call therapy these days, is happening of its own accord. The heart, that's the magic, that the heart heals itself if you just leave it alone. But it can only heal itself into consciousness. So either you feel it as an emotion or you feel it as a physical discomfort or pain. Either way, the heart's releasing its turbulences. So that's why there are all these different techniques. And if you go to Thailand, there's hundreds of them.
Thank you for that. I've got a couple of questions here in the chat.
Okay.
Which I'm going to run together because they're both saying they're beginners. And so one question is, have you got any advice, please, for getting a regular daily meditation routine? And then the other one is, are there any resources that you can recommend to explore meditation to further? I was a bit muddled there. Are there any resources that you recommend to explore meditation for beginners further? There we go.
Well, the first one, how to establish a habit, is very simple. Just do it. A habit is created by doing. It's simply that. You just have to give yourself a time, and in the morning and evening if you can, and don't start with a huge amount of 2 hours. Start with 10 minutes, mean, I started with 20 minutes, and that was painful enough. So you commit a time and a length of time, and you commit to it religiously. Don't matter what happens, you do it, and within 3 or 4 months you'll have the habit. But then you have to be careful, because you think, oh well, I've got a good habit now. But I remember, what was his name? The great Russian dancer of the 60s, Nijinsky. No, not Nijinsky. Who am I thinking of? Anyway, he's it'll come. Oh dear me, it'll come to me anyway. Well, he said that if he stopped practicing for 1 day, it was okay. If he didn't practice for 2 days, he felt it, and if he didn't practice for 3 days, everybody else did. So that's how quickly you can lose a good habit. So you have to keep steaming it up, you know. Resources. Oh, there's masses of resources now. The best thing is, as a beginner, is to find a teacher that you connect with, and just to practice that particular system under that particular teacher. It's not a lifelong commitment. If you get fed up with them, you can move on. If you find that they're not, you know, they've taken you so far and you want to do something else, that's fine. So that's the important thing, is to stay with a teacher for a while. Yeah. Very good.
Are there any other questions at all? If not, I've got to thank you so much for leading the class this evening. It's been great to see and hear you again after far too long.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we sort of go our different ways, do you want to tell us about Satipanya, your centre?
Yes, it's up on the Welsh border. And if you know where Birmingham is, those of you from abroad, you come up to Birmingham from the south and turn immediately west, and you'll hit us. So we're about 50 miles from that place. Shrewsbury is our nearest town. And it's a small centre. It's meant for intensive meditation in the Mahasi tradition. And we only take 10 people maximum. At the moment, we tending to keep it down to 8, because we can keep the COVID distances and all that. And we run courses throughout the year for about 36 weeks. Next year, we'll be running from June to the middle of September. But there's also a November course, all November and all April. There's lots of opportunities to come. And the food's very good. It's important. And you all have a single room. Ooh. It's not en suite, I'm afraid. Didn't have the room to build it.
What's the daily routine, Bhante?
Well, on an intensive course, you begin, of course, by rising at 5, but after about 3 days, you'll have no difficulty rising at 3:30. And we keep the tradition, of course, of only eating twice a day, breakfast and lunch. And then and you finally go to bed around about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Nobody has yet had any difficulty with that. But if they haven't told me.
Colin, could you please write the address in the chat?
Yes, I can. Let me see now. I don't do this often.
Oh.
Let me have a look. Where's the chat line? Here we are, chat. It's the place is called Satipanya. The little village it's in is White Grit. The nearest town is Minsterley. And although it's in Wales, it's actually in Powys. The the post comes through Shrewsbury, and therefore it has a Shropshire address. I can't spell Shropshire. And the website, oh, what have I done there? I haven't got my glasses on, that's the problem. Okay. And the website is simply satipanya.org.uk. Okay.
And if anybody just Google Satipanya, Satipanya, you will get it, no problem. Oh, there we are. And thanks, Bhante. You've got it up there in the chat. Look, somebody else has just sent a question through. It's never too late to send a question. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration. Right. I think it's called Kinhin walking meditation. Could you talk about Rinzai Zen, please? I'm from Yorkshire. Are you also?
No, I'm from the enemy, Lancashire. Now, Rinzai Zen, I really don't know much about. It really is a form of meditation which, in a sense, presents you with paradoxes. And the purpose of the paradox is not that you try to work out, or put it this way, in trying to work out the paradox and in letting go of the paradox, as it were, then in a sense, you're letting go of the conceiving mind, the conceptual mind. And that's one way in which, we can discover our true nature. But I'm afraid I'm not well up on Rinzai. It was Soto Zen that I was practicing. Yeah. Was that the fullness of the question? Yeah.
It specifically, the question was about walking meditation.
Oh, walking. Yeah, walking meditation is, it's just a way really of relaxing in between sits, but it has its own benefit. It's very good for concentration because you're putting your attention on your feet. So it's a pretty loud, obvious sensation. And by doing that, and of course it's neutral, see, concentration on something exciting is no problem. I mean, we don't have a concentration problem watching, a good film, but the concentration we want has to be a quality of the mind itself, and that's based on equanimity. That's based on calmness. So when you're doing walking meditation, there's a sense of calmness in the body. You feel often better than you do when you're sitting. And you're observing neutral sensations in the feet, you see. And even in Kinhin, you do it quite slowly. But in Mahasi, you really do it slowly. It doesn't have to be done slowly, but that's the purpose of walking meditation. Very good for concentration. Calmness. And frankly, if we're dealing with a very strong emotional state, it's always good to walk with it. Even in daily life, just walk down the street.
Well,
very good.
It's 8 o'clock and all good things kind of come to an end. Thank you for coming, and I thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I love it. And Odin, I think, Lavinia, of course, yes. Who?
Yeah, this didn't just happen just like that.
There's lots of people involved. Thank you so much. Yeah.